code built Silicon Valley, but that code was written to connect people, optimize ads, or maybe drive cars. It wasn't built to pull triggers. For decades, there's been a hard cultural line between engineers dreaming up the future and a military tasked with securing the present, often through lethal force. But in January, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth erased that line. He issued a directive that artificial intelligence must be aggressively integrated across all military operations. The problem is, the Pentagon doesn't build the world's most advanced AI. They lack the specialized chips, the global data centers, and the specific engineering talent pool. To modernize, they have to buy it off the shelf from commercial tech giants. Watch these two systems collide. The military demands AI for any lawful governmental purpose, absolute operational freedom. But Silicon Valley bakes in ethical guardrails. They actively refuse to allow their technology for domestic mass surveillance or autonomous weapons. The disagreement boils down to power. Who decides which ethical limits are hard-coded into the weapons of the future? The people writing the software or the people using it? The San Francisco startup Anthropic was the first to get its AI integrated into classified government networks. But when the military asked for full control, Anthropic drew a hard line. They flatly refused to strip the anti-weaponry and surveillance guardrails out of their software. Defense officials pushed back immediately. Their stance is straightforward. A private software vendor has no business dictating the military's rules of engagement. To make an example of them, the Pentagon officially designated Anthropic a supply chain risk. With a few strokes of a pen, they effectively barred one of the world's leading AI labs from securing federal contracts. Anthropic retaliated. They sued the federal governments over the designation, sparking a crisis that forced emergency mediation at the White House just days ago. The military leadership made their priorities clear here. They are willing to cut themselves off from top-tier technology and stall their own modernization if it guarantees absolute operational control. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does defense contracting. Within weeks, OpenAI stepped in and signed deals to deploy its models on those classified networks. Elon Musk's xAI followed right behind them, quietly securing its own access to military systems. Then Google entered the fray with a $200 million deal. The contract allows the Pentagon to deploy the Gemini AI model across its most secure classified networks for any lawful government purpose. The reaction inside Google was explosive. Over 600 employees across the AI and cloud divisions signed a letter actively demanding leadership tear up the contract and deny the military access to their tech. We've seen this exact scenario play out before. In 2018, a similar grassroots uprising at Google actually worked. The pressure forced executives to abandon a major military project, but the corporate machinery adapted. Over the last 6 years, Google's leadership completely centralized the decision-making process for government contracts, designing the system specifically to bypass employee activism. The moral resistance that defined the Silicon Valley workforce a decade ago has been quietly neutralized. When hundreds of millions of defense dollars are on the table, corporate pragmatism always wins out in the end. The Pentagon's attempt to punish non-compliant companies revealed a glaring flaw in their strategy. They asked Congress for $2.3 billion to expand Project Maven, a massive military integration system built by Palantir. But Palantir's system still relies heavily on Anthropic's AI to analyze intelligence. The military hired Google to replace Anthropic on classified networks. Yet, Google is actively committing up to $40 billion directly to Anthropic. Look at the structural dependencies. Anthropic relies almost entirely on Google's cloud servers and custom chips just to function. The military is trying to isolate and punish specific AI labs, but the entire industry is deeply entangled. You can't blacklist a software provider without inevitably relying on the massive tech giants that fund them and host their hardware. The Pentagon successfully crushed the tech industry's initial resistance to defense work. But because the military is entirely dependent on this interconnected web of commercial hardware and talent, the rules of digital warfare will be set by whichever tech giant signs the paperwork.